Hello, my dear, and welcome to another Coaching Corner episode here on YouTube. I've brought you into my gym on this holiday weekend because that's where my best thinking gets done sometimes. And I was just noodling on this topic today while I was kicking my own butt up and down this space. And I wanted us to get really clear about what it is that you want. I think we come through various seasons in our lives where the answer to that question isn't so obvious, it's not so clear to us. And I want to invite you to really think about that for a second. And if what do you want sounds too big of a question to ask, maybe focus on what it is that you don't want. I think most of us are clear about that, right? The quality of life that we don't want, the level of health that we don't want to experience, the types of relationships that we don't want to be in, the financial situation that we don't want to be in. And while I don't like to focus on the negative or on the things that we don't aspire to, sometimes it's easier to understand what it is that we don't want. We can put voice to that. It's much easier to do that than to kind of think hypothetically about what we do want. But here's the thing, when you get clear and you really understand, you come front and center with what you don't want, what you do want starts to become a little bit less gray, right? So on this topic of why you keep breaking promises to yourself, and how to go about rebuilding that self-trust. As always, I've got my trusty notes here. I really want us to understand that everything that we want lies on the other side of kept promises to ourselves. And I know that sounds really trite. It sounds like it couldn't possibly be that simple, but what if it was? My name is Sabrina Militello. I am a coach and founder of Empower Her Coaching, and I bring you these conversations every week here on YouTube to really get to the bottom of what it's going to take for you to live the extraordinary quality of life that you want to experience, to have the level of health that you want to experience, the freedom, the financial situation, the career, the relationships, all of it. How do you go about getting those things? And like I said, everything you want lies on the other side of you learning to keep some promises that you make to yourself. And before you argue with me and say that's not what's in the way, I want to ask you, when was the last time you kept a promise to yourself? You said you were going to get that workout done, and you did. You said you were going to put that amount into savings, and you did. You said you were going to show up to the table and work on your business that you're trying to build today, and you did. You said you were going to show up in great energy and ask for that raise today, and you did. When was the last time you actually followed through on those things that you said you would do for yourself? Now try and argue with me that everything you want is on the other side of the kept promise. It really is. I can say that, and I think sitting in my gym is the perfect example to give you that. I was once clinically obese. I weighed over 257 pounds. I was in terrible health. I had terrible self-esteem, a terrible sense of self-worth. My self-perception was in the toilet. Nothing about my life as it looks today should have been possible for me, except I kept some really important promises that I made to myself. So we're going to dive into this because I've got three frames from which to bring you this conversation to help you understand why you keep breaking those promises to yourself and how to rebuild that self-trust, because every broken promise is you chipping away at the trust that you have in yourself that you can actually follow through on the things that you say that you're going to do. All right, so the three frames are the shame frame, the neuroscience frame, and then the season frame. And I'm gonna move through all of these kind of to give you almost like a framework from which to work from, to really understand what's going on for you. All right, so the first one, or the first teaching, even before we get into these frames, let me clarify something really quickly, because it's so easy to poo-poo on this topic of self-trust. I think it is. A lot of people don't give this enough emphasis, or they don't give this enough importance. They don't focus on this enough when it comes to your personal development, your personal growth, healing, all of that stuff. And I think it is so important for this reason. And I wrote this down because when it came to me while I was over there getting my butt kicked. When it came to me, it was just like ding. It was like something went off in my mind. So I scribbled it down. Confidence is not built by telling yourself you're amazing. It's built by proving to yourself that you can keep your word even when it's hard. Confidence is not built by telling yourself you're amazing. It's built by proving to yourself that you can keep your word even when it's hard. And I actually heard some version of that from Layla Hormozi recently, and it's just been tickling in my brain ever since then. Because self-trust, it's something that runs on a loop, right? It runs on a loop, and your actions determine whether that loop creates more self-trust and more confidence, or whether that loop deteriorates self-trust and erodes your confidence. Your actions determine the loop, right? And you're literally the one that decides which way that loop turns, if it's in the positive direction or if it's in the negative direction. And so stepping into the frames, and the first frame that I wanted us to talk about, which was the shame frame, the loop looks like this. You keep the promise, and this is where shame happens, right? You make the promise, you break the promise, you shame yourself about that, you avoid doing the things because you feel shame and you want to avoid shame, and you repeat. You just repeat that cycle. You make the promise, you break the promise, you feel shame, you do everything you can to avoid that shame feeling, and so the cycle just repeats, right? And that cycle is precisely the reason why you keep landing back at day one, at square one, at here we go again, let's try this again. The shame is the fuel that keeps that cycle spinning. You make the promise, I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna work on my business today. That business that I want to grow, that's going to get me out of this 9-to-5 job that I don't like, that's going to give me the level of financial freedom and time freedom and location freedom that I really want, that's going to give me the ability to serve my family and my community. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work on that business today. And then you wake up and maybe you're not in a great mood, or maybe somebody made a comment on a post that you made on social media, or maybe you didn't make a sale. And so you're kind of like, nah, I'm not going to do it today. I don't feel like it. It's not working anyway. What's even the point? You negotiate with yourself and you talk yourself out of it. You don't keep the promise of working on that business today. And so you feel shame about that, right? You start to think, oh man, why didn't I do that? Like, I suck. I'm the worst. Like, nothing I do ever works. This is terrible. You start to make yourself wrong for it. And then that feeling of feeling wrong, feeling bad, feeling like you're letting yourself down, you want to avoid that, right? You want to avoid that because it doesn't feel good. It says, it niggles at something that you secretly know to be true about yourself, the stories that you have in your mind about your worth. It chips at that. And so you avoid being in that position again. And so you don't work on your business for the rest of that week. You just avoid it, get it out of your head, don't bother. And so the cycle repeats because you continue to break the promise, you continue to feel that shame because it doesn't go away, does it? It niggles in the back of your mind. You continue to feel that, and so you continue to avoid and repeat and repeat and repeat. The shame is the fuel that keeps that cycle spinning. However, the cycle can go in a different direction. You can make the promise, I'm going to sit and I'm going to work on my business today because I'm really clear about what this is all for. Regardless of what season I'm in, how hard this is, I'm going to do it. You sit down, you get some work done. You do some reach out, you create that content, you put yourself out there, you do it, and you feel a sense of pride. I did that. It might not have had the outcome that I immediately want, but I know that this is going to work if I just keep going. I'm proud of myself today. You want to continue to feel that way about yourself, and so you continue to show up and do the things that make you feel proud, and the cycle repeats. The pride is the fuel that keeps that cycle spinning. Can you see how it's exactly the same thing, just Your actions were what determined which direction it went. And so I really want you to understand that keeping the promises that you make to yourself is how you build self-trust. It's how you build confidence. It's how you build competence. It's how you get to the other side of your dreams becoming your reality. Everything you want is on the other side of that kept promise. Can you see that? So that's the shame lens, right? The shame frame. Let's take this to a neuroscientific standpoint, the neuroscience frame, for those of you that need a little bit more, like, I need to understand what's actually going on, right? So your brain keeps you consistent with who you believe yourself to be. That's one of the functions of your brain, is to always keep you consistent with who you believe yourself to be. It's why people struggle so much to get free from addiction, to get out of broken relationships, destructive environments, because they believe themselves to be somebody who deserves that kind of treatment, or who is not strong enough to get out of that particular situation, is not strong enough to get away from doing those particular kinds of things. Your brain keeps you consistent with who you believe yourself to be. So in this case, a kept promise is not willpower in action. You listening? A kept promise is not willpower in action, as we often think it is, right? We often think, in order to keep the promises I made to myself, I have to have all this willpower. I have to just be so determined. It's not that. It's evidence that updates your identity. It's evidence that quietly in the background is updating your identity. And so it's crucial that you keep your promises to yourself in order to become the person that you ultimately want to be, who can live the life that you ultimately want to live, who can hold the things, carry the things, live into the things. Think about that. From a neuroscientific perspective, your brain is designed to keep you consistent with who you believe yourself to be. And so every promise that you keep is evidence, it's proof that is updating who you believe yourself to be. Can you see the significance of that? And so in reverse, every broken promise, you're simply reinforcing who you believe yourself to be. And if that person is not the one ultimately that has what you want, that holds what you want, that lives the way that you do, has the level of health you have, the finances, the relationships, the lifestyle that you want, you continuing to break the promises that you make to yourself is simply reinforcing your belief that you are not the person who can have any of that. And so again, keeping the promises that you make to yourself is the thing that is in between the life that you have and the one that ultimately you want to experience. So that's the neuroscience frame. The season frame, we're talking about life seasons specifically, right? And in this, with this frame, with this lens, through this context, it's really important that you start to allow yourself to adjust the level or the breadth, the extent of the promises that you make to yourself to fit, to match the season of life that you're in, so that you can continue to make progress in the right direction. So many of us have an all or nothing mentality, right? If I can't do it all, then there's no point me doing any of it. This workout that I just did today completely kicked my booty for so many reasons. And there was so many moments where I was like, well, I can't lift the amount of weight that I usually lift. I can't get to the reps that I'm usually able to get to. So I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just not gonna bother. But I did what I could with what I have in the moment that I'm in, right? That's an example of adjusting for the season or the moment that currently exists for you, rather than thinking, if I can't do it all, there's no point in doing anything. The key thing there in your ability to adjust this, and this is something that I talk to my clients about a lot, is understanding that when you make that adjustment, you're not lowering your standards. You're not negotiating with yourself to make it okay that you do less. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that you're keeping yourself moving forward on the path that's in the direction that you want your life to go. That's the key piece. It's understanding that simply adjusting to the season that you're in, the moment that you're in, when it doesn't quite match where it is that you want to be, or maybe even where you've been before, is not you phoning it in or lowering the standard or lowering the expectation you have for yourself. It's you making a slight adjustment, a slight deviation, so that you can stay ultimately on the path that's headed in the right direction. This is so key, because when you put yourself to a standard and don't give yourself any ability to adjust that standard, you're forcing yourself to a standstill in moments where that just is not necessary. If you're in a new life season, if you're navigating new worries or new obstacles, rather than making it an all or nothing situation, and so stalling your progress until everything turns out all right, things go back to normal, until everything is good again, you're allowing yourself to keep moving forward. Because I don't know about you, but when has everything been perfect? Have you ever had a moment in your life that it lasted a significant amount of time where everything was perfect, all the stars were aligned? And when we do that, when we make that the expectation, it's actually a really dangerous thing that we're doing, because we're teaching ourselves that everything has to be perfect in order for progress to be made. And that's just not a lesson that should be anywhere near this process of growth that we're in. So those three frames, the shame frame, the neuroscience frame, and the season frame, are just three ways that I want you to look at how to continue to build your self-trust, build your confidence, build your competence through the process of keeping the promises you make to yourself. And I'm hoping that it gives you a better ability to understand that you breaking that promise isn't just it doesn't really matter, I'll try again tomorrow. No, it's a vote for the person that you want to be. Keeping the promise that you make to yourself is a vote for the life that you want to have. It's a vote for the version of yourself that you want to be, that can live that quality of life that you want to experience. It matters. It matters, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be kept in some way. I hope this spoke to you. I hope it gave you some real things to noodle on, to kind of navigate through, to grapple with, and gave you a tool that you can move forward with in the adjustment piece of the equation. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. I would love that if you did. And just remember, it's so important that you give yourself the space and the time and the ability to shift and adjust where it's necessary, so that you can keep moving in the direction you want to go. All right? Until next time.